Kubanage Hindak.
Welcome back, Dr. Larson and colleagues. So you're all very well aware of health and safety issues raised by whistleblowers in the past at the ANSTO facility at Lucas Heights, and you'll also, I suspect, recall with clarity the reviews that were conducted in 2011 and 2012 into the health and safety culture that has various reviews that have made some fairly strong recommendations. Dr. Larson, how's Arpansa tracking implementation of the recommendations of the various reviews and further improvements of the health and safety culture at the ANSTO facility?
Well, the safety Carl is Larson, CEO of Arpansa. The safety culture is an issue that we have been tracking for some time, and it was actually subject or the restructure that I made in Arpansa a couple of years back picked up on that specifically, so that I established a safety analysis section within Arpansa in order to assess what we can broadly summarize as safety culture, which is really about not only the technical aspects of safety, it's also about the organizational, behavioral, psychological aspects of safety. And there has been a lot of activity going on in that space. From Arpansa, we have developed assessment tools, and we are applying them to our different license holders, and we are also asking the license holders to apply them to themselves to make self-assessment. ANSTO has volunteered to do so. I do not believe that they have actually conducted it yet or completed it yet. We are continuously monitoring the different issues that we have had over the last few years at ANSTO and following up on the different requirements that we have placed on them. And generally speaking, we are comfortable with the progress. I think that I am reasonably convinced that the safety culture is adequate. Reasonably convinced doesn't sound to be a lot, but I don't think as a regulator I should be anything else than reasonably convinced. And if I get new information in the next 5 minutes or tomorrow, I will reassess the situation.
That was well articulated. Can you just go through the elements and I'll just make sure that I'm clear on what you've just told us? You don't believe ANSTO has completed the self-assessment process yet. Can you just step us through what the elements of that assessment are, if I understand you correctly?
That is according to guidelines that we have issued, and those guidelines will also be available on the internet, so you can see them yourself, Senator.
They're up already?
Sorry?
They're there already?
Yeah, they should be there already. And that means the going through in a systematic fashion the managerial issues, the approach from management, the systems, quality systems, the reporting, and other issues, and there are a lot of them. And I think that in order to fully appreciate what's in there, it's better to have a look at the guidelines as such.
Dr. Larson, you're the nation's radiation safety regulator. You're not here to have views on HR practices, so that's not where I'm trying to drag you, because I recognise that they're beyond your remit. But do you have any way of assessing whether staff members feel that they can safely report using ANSTO's new reporting practices and complaints mechanisms, given that they've just been given some rather brutal object lessons in what happens to whistleblowers?
From the experience that we have and looking at the safety issues and what is currently considered to be zero tolerance, there seems to be an increase in reporting, which probably means that more is reported because the threshold for reporting has lowered.
Okay.
And that means that probably one of the conclusions that you can draw from that is that staff is probably much more comfortable in coming forward. And I would expect that to have happened in the light of the last 2 years' experiences that we have had.
You mean zero tolerance of incidents rather than zero tolerance of whistleblowers, I trust?
Well, I don't think there should be zero tolerance of whistleblowers. I think that whistleblowers can contribute very much under many circumstances to the improvement of safety.
In this instance, I think you could say absolutely. That's exactly what we've seen at the isotope plant. The reason that I put that question to you in that way is that since we've taken up Mr. Reed's case, which you'd be very familiar with by now, our office is, I should say, routinely, regularly contacted by people who are too afraid to speak up. They don't necessarily trust their representatives inside the company, and they're quite distressed. We've been referring them to you. I mean...
And that, I think, is very appropriate, Senator.
Okay.
They should come to us. And again, if you go to the front page of the Arpansa website, you will actually have information there on how to do in order to submit such information to us. And there's also information there on the provisions for protection of privacy and so on, if you do that.
So you can't therefore give us any identifiable cases. I don't want you to trespass on activities that are afoot, but how frequent are those sort of reports through
We
the
do
site?
get such reports. I wouldn't be comfortable in commenting on the frequency because they are rare, and because they are rare, you cannot really establish a frequency.
Okay.
But we do get such reports.
The last time that I spoke to you, not having been present at February estimates, I think was last October, and we spoke regarding the differences of opinion between Arpansa and ANSTO about the KPGM review of the Comcare report. Now, at that time, Dr. Larson, you indicated you accepted the findings of the Comcare report. So did KPMG. ANSTO did not accept them, and Dr. Patterson was actually quite emphatic in his rejection of the findings. I just wonder, since last October, whether you think there's been any resolution of that difference of views between regulator and regulated.
Yes, I have received correspondence from ANSTO indicating that there were clear deficiencies in the safety culture in the organizations in the year 2007. I believe that we have reached now a common view on this. I accepted the KPMG's findings on the basis that they indicated that there was a clear uncertainty, in particular with regard to who was present where at what time, which in itself is enough to give me concern.
Yeah. So do you believe that that difference in views has been resolved between Arpansa and ANSTO?
I believe it has been resolved.
Last time we spoke, you also indicated that Arpansa was reviewing material to be used in the public consultation process on the interim waste storage facility at ANSTO on the existing site. Could you just update the committee about your activities around that facility and outline how you see the timeline unfolding there?
The public consultation is ongoing, and yet again there is plenty of information on the Arpansa's website currently. And the public consultation is not only on the interim waste store, it's also on the expanded production of molybdenum 99.
Yeah.
And the window for public submissions closes on the 12th of June. In order to support the public consultation process, we also organized a public forum that we held a few weeks back. That was held in the Engadine Community Centre, Sutherland Shire, and was attended by some 50 people, obviously, some of them from our organization and many of them also from ANSTO.
Yeah.
But there was a wide variety there of different views, also from the local citizens and from the Sutherland Shire Council. So I think that we got a broad perspective coming out of that and the different views on those different applications. And as I said, it's still possible to submit views to us until the 12th of June.
What happens then when you've stopped?
What happens
once you've stopped
then is
taking
that the
public
views will be taken into account into the assessment of both of these facilities. I'm advised by my staff that the first preliminary assessment of the interim waste store is going to be ready by the end of this month, beginning of the next month. After that, there will be several iterations before we actually reach a decision, and I'm not preempting the decision, of course. Also, there will be a review of the public submissions, and there will be a public response to the submissions. Actually, all of that is going to be taken into account in the decision making.
Okay.
And the way the different views that have been expressed during the consultation process is also going to be made publicly available.
All right. It sounds like one of the better processes. I've certainly heard worse.
Thank you.
We'll just have to see how that plays out. I'm glad you had good attendance at your public forum. Since October, in fact, since the budget, there was an announcement of funding in the DRET portfolio for the construction of a remote site north of Tennant Creek, and we're both well aware of the processes that are unfolding around that. There's also now very active discussion of a second site, still on Muckaty Land Trust land, but not the one that has been assessed and had a lot of geotechnical work done and a lot of disputation that's landed the Commonwealth in the federal court. What is Arpansa's visibility of that second site? Are you aware of where it is, and have you been called in to provide any advice on that?
No, and I don't think that it's the right moment for us to provide advice. I think that we should be very mindful of our regulatory role and the role of being the decision maker here. That means that we are not steering the process of providing advice other than providing advice on the requirements that we have put in place. And since we spoke last, Senator, I believe we have also provided or published a fairly extensive regulatory guide that relates to waste store and waste disposal facilities, available on the Arpansa website, that also went through public consultation.
Yeah. Is that all that you are doing at the moment, having completed that work and with a court action holding the first site effectively in limbo, a second site not yet documented and its precise location apparently unknown to DRED officials I spoke to last week? Are you conducting any active work at the moment on the assessment of the remote site? Or maybe assessment's too strong a word, but anywhere on the process?
Not on the sites, because, as I said, I think it's absolutely premature.
Too soon.
We have to be very mindful of the clarity of roles here.
Thank you. Moving on, in October 2007, that doesn't read quite right actually, probably 2012, there was formal confirmation from ASNO that Australian obligation nuclear material was at the Fukushima Daiichi site and in each of the reactors. And following that crisis, the UN Secretary-General initiated a comprehensive review of international nuclear safety, security and safeguards. Now, a lot of that review, this is the UN system-wide study that Arpansa was involved in, has relevance to the Australian uranium sector, and some of the concerns and recommendations require active attention and action in Australia. So I'll just read you very briefly, you're probably quite familiar with this by now. In relation to uranium mining, that UN system-wide study recommended that to help countries evaluate the potential contribution of nuclear energy to sustainable development, an in-depth assessment of the net cost impact of the following is needed: local impacts of mining. There are concerns regarding the impacts of mining fissionable material on local communities and ecosystems. That's from section 70. So what action or information has Arpansa taken or provided to the Australian government with regard to that recommendation?
Well, first of all, I think I need to correct you on the fact that we were not part of the system-wide study.
Okay.
That was a UN study, and that was, if I remember correctly, that was requested by Secretary General Ban.
Yeah.
And the way that we are addressing uranium mining issues are within the country, and as an advisor in this particular case to SUPAC, to the Department of Environment, in order to advise them on the particular radiological issues that arise during uranium mining. We are also driving the national uniformity process, as we have been mentioning many times, through the Radiation Health Committee, which means interaction with all the state and territory regulators in order to establish national uniform standards that relate to uranium mining. And that is an ongoing process.
Are you able to identify, though, any action at all that Arpansa has taken in response to that UN system-wide study and those recommendations? Or are these things, the things that you're describing, would they have occurred anyway?
Well, The advice that we provide is through those mechanisms that are established, and that is the collaboration that we have with the Department of Environment. And we are also currently developing a number of standards that are to be implemented uniformly across Australia, one on site closure and also on the environment and environmental protection. So the work is ongoing.
Okay, but it doesn't sound as though there's been any specific reaction or response. Like, I understand the context.
To the UN system-wide study,
Yeah.
is that what you're referring to? I think that this is very well aligned with the UN-wide study.
Aligned. Has Arpansa, or just to close then on that matter, has there been any material change in the legal, regulatory or operational frameworks governing Australia's uranium sector since the disaster on the 3rd of March 2011?
I do not believe so, but I would have to say that Arpansa is not a regulator here, so it wouldn't have the direct visibility from the Arpansa perspective or from the perspective of the Arpansa Act.
Okay. All right.
So just to clarify, I only limit my response to that question to the remit that my organisation has.
Yep. No, I've been doing estimates for a while. I'm familiar with that caveat, whether it's spoken or unspoken. Can you tell us what the current status and key priorities, if you know, are of the International Framework on Nuclear Energy Cooperation? Does Australia have representation in that forum? Is it something that you've got visibility of?
I haven't got the visibility of that from my organisation. We do participate, though, in a lot of the international activities in relation to nuclear safety through the participation in the different groups under the IAEA, including the safety standards,
but not
and
that one
working under the action plan that was developed after the Fukushima accident.
Yeah, okay. Are you able to tell us what advice or input you have provided to the Queensland government agencies in relation to plans for uranium mining in that state? Have you been brought in?
We had a letter requesting information, and yet again we referred to our role here, which is being a Commonwealth regulator and with no jurisdiction in Queensland.
There's no jurisdiction until a particular project is afoot?
Well, we don't have jurisdiction until in a specific project either, because it's not under our regulatory control. So what we would do in the case that the project would go ahead would be that we would support the Department of Environment in their assessment following the EPBC Act.
Okay. So just tell me again about this letter. What did the letter invoke or request?
I will have to take that on notice so that I don't quote that wrongly, Senator. So I would be happy to come back with information on that.
Okay, but having been made some sort of request, have you responded with advice or expertise to the Queensland authorities?
We have responded in the way that I indicated. I will look at my colleagues here, but maybe you want to fill in.
Professor Peter Johnson, Branch Head Medical Radiation Services, Arpansa. In response to the letter from the Queensland group looking at uranium mining, we responded essentially outlining what we consider to be good practice in terms of the codes and standards that we have published in the past.
Okay, so you're just acquainting them with what already exists?
Yes.
Okay. Look, just finally, because I've taken up a little more of your time than I probably intended to, could you just describe for us, if you're aware, or how you would characterise the state of play in Australia around the development of non-reactor technologies for medical isotope production, apart from flying stuff in from Canada and South Africa?
Yet again, I think that this is perhaps a question that should be posed to other organisations, because it wouldn't have visibility from our horizon before it actually became a regulatory issue. And I'm currently not aware, but that is not to say that there are no initiatives going on, but I'm currently not aware of any.
As the regulator. Senator McLucas, could I put that one through you to the Minister?
Requesting?
I'm
Sorry.
interested to know the state of play or what initiatives the Commonwealth has got afoot in any department, whether, I don't know who it would be, DRET or Health, potentially, on non-reactor methods of producing the kind of radioisotopes that are currently only produced at Lucas Heights.
We'll see what we can get to.
Thank you. I'll leave it there.